청취자 여러분, 오늘 저희가 깊이 들여다볼 자료는요. 최근 있었던 백악관 브리핑 음성 기록입니다.
네, 안녕하세요.
내용이 상당히 많죠. 이란 핵시설 타격 문제부터 시작해서 네이토 정상회의 성과, 그리고 국내 문제로는 육아나 감세 법안 같은 것까지요.
맞습니다. 현 행정부의 여러 가지 생각들을 한눈에 볼 수 있는 그런 브리핑이었는데요.
네, 이걸 통해서 발표 내용의 핵심, 그리고 그 배경은 뭘지 한번 명확하게 파악해보는 시간을 갖겠습니다.
좋습니다. 단순 요약보다는 각 사안들이 어떻게 연결되는지, 또 어떤 메시지를 주려는 건지 거기에 좀 집중해서 파헤쳐보죠.
가장 먼저 나온 이야기는 역시 이란 핵시설 타격 작전, 그 미드나잇 해머였어요.
네, 그렇죠. 세 곳의 주요 시설을 아주 정밀하게 타격했다. 이런 내용이었고.
목표는 그 핵 농축 목약 제거였다고 했죠.
맞습니다. 완전히 제거하겠다 이거였죠. 브리핑에서는 이게 뭐랄까 압도적인 성공이었다고 아주 강하게 주장했어요.
성공의 근거로는 미국, 이스라엘, 유엔뿐만 아니라 이란 스스로도 핵무기 제조가 불가능해졌다는 걸 인정했다 이렇게 밝혔고요.
네, 특히 이전 행정부, 오바마나 바이든 행정부 때의 방식, 예를 들면 현금 지원 같은 것과는 다르다 이런 식으로 좀 대조를 하더라고요. 이번 조치가 얼마나 단호했는지 강조하려는 의도가 좀 보였어요.
근데 타격 후에 불과 48시간 만에요. 이스라엘이랑 이란 사이에 휴전이 성사됐다는 발표도 있었어요. 이건 좀 빠르지 않나요?
네, 상당히 신속했죠. 그러면서도 이제 외교적인 노력은 계속하고 있다 이렇게 밝혔습니다. 카타르 같은 중재자를 통해서 이란과 계속 소통하고 있다고요?
아, 소통 계속하는군요. 목표는 비핵화된 민간 핵 프로그램 합의라고 하고요.
그렇죠. 그리고 이스라엘하고 협력해서 이란이 혹시 다시 핵 개발 시도를 하는지 감시도 계속할 거라고 하고요. 여기서 이제 힘을 통한 평화랄까요? 현 행정부의 그 외교 기조가 딱 드러나는 부분이죠. 군사행동 후에 바로 외교적 해결을 찾는 모습.
그런데 말이죠. 이 작전 성공 발표랑 거의 동시에 정보 유출 문제도 되게 강하게 제기했어요. 특정 언론사, CNN이랑 기자 이름까지 언급하면서 가짜뉴스라고 비판하고.
네, 맞아요. 유출자 수사 중이고 심지어 의회 쪽으로 정보 접근을 좀 제한할 수도 있다. 이런 뉘앙스까지 풍겼죠.
이건 좀 이례적이라고 봐야 할까요?
상당히 강경한 반응이죠. 정보 유출에 대한 불신이 아주 깊어 보이고 또 행정부의 메시지를 좀 통제하려는 의지도 강하게 드러나는 것 같아요. 단순 사실 전달을 넘어서는 어떤 감정적인 대응처럼 보이기도 하고요.
자, 그럼 이제 국제 문제에서 국내 쪽으로 한번 시선을 돌려볼까요? 네이토 정상회의 얘기가 나왔어요. 동맹국들이 연 GDP의 5%를 국방비에 투자하기로 합의했다는 소식.
네, 이것도 트럼프 대통령이 요구에 따른 성과다. 이렇게 강조를 했죠.
그렇죠. 네이토 역사상 가장 큰 규모의 집단 방위 강화다. 미국의 부담도 줄었다. 이렇게 평가를 했고요.
이게 아까 말씀드린 그 힘을 통한 평화 기조하고도 딱 연결이 되는 지점입니다. 동맹국의 역할을 더 강조하면서 미국의 어떤 전략적 이익을 관철하려는 시도로 볼 수 있겠죠?
국내 경제 쪽으로 와보면 유가 이야기가 나왔습니다. 유가가 안정세다.
네, 작년 같은 기간보다 저렴하고 2021년 이후 여름철 기준으로 보면 제일 낮은 수준이다 이렇게 밝혔어요.
근거로는 공급이 풍부하고 미국 내에 에너지 생산이 늘었기 때문이다 이렇게 설명하면서 월스트리트 저널 같은 언론 보도도 인용했고요.
그렇죠. 유가 안정은 사실 국민들이 바로 체감할 수 있는 부분이니까 행정부 입장에서는 굉장히 중요한 성과로 내세우고 싶을 거예요. 에너지 자립 정책하고도 딱 맞아떨어지고요.
그리고 여기에 더해서 그 이름도 거창한 하나의 크고 아름다운 법안, 대규모 감세안 추진 상환도 꽤 비중 있게 다뤘죠.
아, 네. 그 감세안. 역사상 최대 규모의 노동자, 중산층 감세다 이렇게 설명을 했는데요.
구체적인 혜택들도 제시했더라고요. 가구당 연평균 1만 달러 이상 실수령액이 늘어난다거나.
네, 특정 소득 구간은 15% 세금 감면, 또 초과근무나 팁소득자 세금 감면, 노년층 사회보장연금 세금 부담 완화 이런 내용들이 포함된다고 했어요.
이걸 7월 4일 독립기념일까지 법안 서명을 목표로 하고 있다고요.
네, 상원에서 관련 절차가 진행 중이라고 밝혔습니다. 특히 재원 마련 방안으로는 메디케이드 관련해서 좀 낭비나 사기, 남용을 없애는 데 집중하겠다 이런 점을 강조했고요. 감세를 통해서 경제 성장을 이끌겠다는 의지가 아주 강하게 보입니다.
그 외에도 몇 가지 현안들이 좀 짧게 언급됐는데요. 무역협상 시한은 결정적인 건 아니다. 대통령이 상호 관세율을 정할 수 있다. 이런 언급이 있었고.
네, 협상은 계속 진행 중이라는 거였죠. 그리고 우크라이나 지원 관련해서는 젤렌스키 대통령과 회담했고 패트리엇 미사일 추가 지원 가능성은 열어뒀지만 구체적인 내용은 좀 말을 아꼈어요.
아, 그리고 아브라함 협정, 중동 평화 구상이죠. 이걸 더 많은 국가로 확대하고 싶어하고 시리아에도 참여를 요청했다는 내용도 있었네요.
네, 맞아요. 그리고 국내 문제로는 또 이민정책 관련해서 마이애미 헤럴드의 이주아동 보도를 또 한 번 가짜뉴스라고 강하게 비판했고요.
근거로는 5월 국경 통계를 들었죠. 불법 입국자가 0명이었다 이렇게 주장하면서요.
네. 또 보이스 오브 아메리카, VOA 관련해서도 의회의 예산 삭감을 요구했고 행정명령까지 검토 중이다 이런 언급도 있었어요. 전반적으로 보면 행정부의 좀 비판적인 보도나 정보 유출에 대해서는 여전히 아주 날선 반응을 보이고 있습니다.
오늘 브리핑 내용을 이렇게 쭉 훑어보니까요. 정말 두 개의 큰 축이 보이네요. 이란 문제에 대한 군사적 조치와 외교적 해결 병행, 또 나토 동맹 강화, 나는 외교 안보 축.
그리고 다른 한 축은 유가 안정과 대규모 감세를 통한 국내 경제 활성화. 이 두 가지가 아주 뚜렷하게 드러납니다.
네. 힘을 앞세운 외교 안보, 그리고 감세 중심의 경제 정책. 이게 현 행정부의 핵심 동력이라는 걸 다시 한번 확인하게 되네요.
맞습니다. 그리고 정보 통제에 대한 강한 의지 역시 계속해서 좀 주목해 볼 만한 지점인 것 같고요.
자, 오늘 저희가 살펴본 이 브리핑 내용을 바탕으로요. 청취자 여러분께서도 한번 생각해 보시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 이 힘을 통한 평화라는 접근법, 그리고 여러 국내 정책들이 서로 어떻게 맞물려 돌아가는지, 또 이게 장기적으로는 어떤 영향을 미치게 될까요? 각자의 시각으로 더 깊이 고민해 보시면 흥미로운 지점들을 발견하실 수 있을 겁니다.
Following President Trump's command, the most powerful military in the history of the world executed massive precision strikes on 3 of the Iranian regime's key nuclear facilities. The objective of Operation Midnight Hammer was to destroy the regime's nuclear enrichment capacity and stop the grave nuclear threat posed to the United States, Israel, and the rest of the free world. The mission, which will go down in the history books, was an overwhelming success. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Raisin Kane covered the operation in great detail at their briefing this morning at the Pentagon, and I encourage every American to watch it. As President Trump has said repeatedly, the United States of America has the greatest, fiercest, and bravest armed forces ever to stride the face of this earth, and we couldn't be more grateful and proud of our nation's warriors. The Iranian regime was weeks away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon that would threaten the entire world before President Trump took this decisive action on Saturday night to obliterate their nuclear capabilities. The contrast in leadership could not be more clear. Barack Obama and Joe Biden sent pallets of cash, American taxpayer dollars, in a failed attempt to buy the Iranian regime's compliance with a weak and ineffective deal. President Trump sent a fleet of American warplanes to destroy Iran's ability to produce a nuclear weapon. The United States and the entire world are safer because of this president's decisiveness. Despite agenda-driven leaks by the fake news media aimed at undermining this incredible accomplishment achieved by President Trump and our brave fighter pilots, there is broad consensus emerging already that Iran's nuclear capabilities were indeed destroyed. The United States, Israel, the United Nations, and even Iran all agree they can no longer build a nuclear weapon. So why did the president immediately turn to obliterating after the Iranian nuclear threat? Securing peace. Within 48 hours of the devastating strike, President Trump and his team brokered a historic ceasefire between Israel and Iran and officially ended the 12-day war. The Middle East is now shifting away from chaos and bloodshed and moving toward the beginning stages of a new era of peace and stability that President Trump has long called on them to achieve. This was unthinkable at this time last week, and this is what peace through strength looks like. Under President Trump, America will relentlessly advance our interests without being dragged into endless wars. His fearless leadership guarantees America is once again respected across the world. Just look at what he was able to accomplish at the NATO summit in the Netherlands. Many of you were there. Our allies agreed to invest 5% of their GDP annually in defense because President Trump demanded it. This will be the most significant reinforcement of NATO's collective defense in the history of the NATO alliance. And as a result, The United States of America will carry less of the burden, and our NATO allies will be stronger than ever before. As NATO Secretary General Ruda put it, for too long, one ally, the United States, and our taxpayers, I may add, carried too much of the burden of that commitment. And that changes today. President Trump made this change possible. We will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us stronger and fairer by equalizing spending between America and our allies. This is the Trump effect. This is what the president meant when he declared that America is back. Now, back here at home, Americans are paying much cheaper prices for gasoline this summer, as both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times pointed out today. Here's how the Wall Street Journal put it. Hitting the road this summer won't bring as much of a big hit to your wallet. The national average for a gallon of regular gasoline is about 23 cents cheaper than this time last year. Analysts say plentiful supply is expected to keep prices down in the coming months. These are the cheapest gas prices at this point of the summer since 2021. And despite all the doom casting from liberal pundits, oil prices on Tuesday were lower than before the Israel-Iran conflict began. As President Trump continues to unleash American energy, our country will have even more efficient, reliable, and affordable energy to protect our national security and fuel our people. Later this afternoon, here at the White House, the president will host a One Big Beautiful event in the East Room to rally Republicans to get the One Big Beautiful bill across the finish line. At that event, he will be joined by everyday Americans from across the country who will massively benefit from the common sense policies and provisions within this bill. This is the largest tax cut for working and middle-class Americans in history, and it's going to put more money into the pockets of hardworking Americans. Families will see an average increase in take-home pay of more than $10,000 per year. Americans earning between $30,000 and $80,000 per year will see a 15% tax cut. Overtime and tipped workers will save thousands of dollars annually. And our amazing seniors will receive historic financial relief by reducing the tax burden on their Social Security benefits. Simply put, this bill is going to unlock the golden age of America. And we look forward to continuing to work with the Senate and the House to see this bill on the president's desk for signature by Independence Day. Here in our new media seat today, we have Colin Anderson with the Washington Free Beacon, who will kick off our question and answer. Colin, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. We reported yesterday on a briefing from the Israeli defense minister in which he said the U.S. and Israel are working together to monitor any attempts from Iran to rebuild their nuclear program, and also that if Iran was to do so, the U.S. and Israel would work together to once again destroy that nuclear program. Does that align with the president's thinking?
Look, the president, as I said in those opening remarks, Colin, and thanks for being with us today, views the Middle East on its way to peace and prosperity. And the president used strength on Saturday night. The whole world saw that the United States is indeed the most lethal fighting force in the world with those precision strikes on Saturday evening. But the president wants peace. He always has. And right now we're on a diplomatic path with Iran. The president and his team, namely Special Envoy Witkoff, continue to be in communication with the Iranians and especially our Gulf and Arab partners in the region to come to an agreement with Iran. As for our alliance with the State of Israel and that friendship and that partnership between the United States and the State of Israel, I would argue it has never been stronger. And we see a new era in which perhaps some of these Gulf and Arab states can sign on to the Abraham Accords. That was one of the president's most signature accomplishments in his first term, and he'd like to see more of those countries sign on in this second term. And so we look forward to sustaining a long and durable peace in the region, and the president wants to do that through a diplomatic solution. But as he proved on Saturday night, he's not afraid to use strength if we need to do it. Gabe.
Thanks, Caroline. The president mentioned in a Truth Social post that no enriched uranium was moved from Fordow. What about the other two sites, Isfahan and Natanz? And how can the president be so sure that no uranium was moved?
Well, what I can assure you is that the United States and our intelligence agencies and Director Ratcliffe and the President's entire national security team were obviously watching these sites very closely in the weeks and the days leading up to the attack on Saturday, which I will add was one of the most secretive and successful operations in United States history. I think many of you in this room would agree with that because none of you in this room knew about the strike on Saturday until it took place. So we were watching closely, and there was no indication to the United States that any of that enriched uranium was moved prior to the strike.
From any of the sites?
Correct.
And then one more thing, Caroline. next week, the president mentioned that there would be talks with Iran. Didn't mention any details, and Iran has not confirmed them. Can you share any details about any potential talks next week?
We don't have anything scheduled as of now, but I spoke to our Special Envoy Witkoff at length this morning, and I can assure all of you we continue to be in close communication with the Iranians and through our intermediaries as well, namely the Qataris, who have been an incredible ally and partner throughout this entire effort. And as I said, this administration is always focused on diplomacy and peace, and we want to ensure we can get to a place where Iran agrees to a non-enrichment civil nuclear program, and there are many other requests that the United States has. Those details continue to really, they're just starting. Of course, the operation was just on Saturday night, but we are in touch, and if there is a meeting, we will let you know, as we always do. Brian.
Thank you, Caroline. There's two. One on trade. On the July deadline that's coming up for the trade deals, is that deadline still hard and fast for the president, or is he now considering even coming to trade deals after that deadline, and where is he on that going forward?
I think the president has been asked this quite a few times by many of you in the media. I've heard him answer it at press conferences and at gaggles. He just spoke about it on Air Force One. The deadline is not critical. The president can simply provide these countries with a deal if they refuse to make us one by the deadline, and that means the president can pick a reciprocal tariff rate that he believes is advantageous for the United States and for the American worker, and he will continue to do that. But as for the deals, our United States Trade Ambassador, Jameson Greer, I speak to him frequently. He's working very hard, and he has had very good and productive discussions with many of our key trading partners.
And on the One Big Beautiful Bill, there's conversations on the Hill right now about the Medicaid cuts. I'm curious, if the final bill that the president's been talking about comes to him and it has Medicaid cuts in it, will he sign it, or would he rather just Congress do away with those cuts?
I think our friends in both the Senate and the House know exactly where the president stands on Medicaid. He wants to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse, and they are working to do that in the Senate right now. Jennifer.
Follow up on that, on the big beautiful bill, is there enough time for Congress to work through the issues it needs to work through? I'm saying, does the president need to move back his deadline a little bit?
We expect that bill to be on the president's desk for signature by July 4th. I know that there was a ruling by the Senate parliamentarian this morning. Look, this is part of the process. This is part of the inner workings of the United States Senate, but the president is adamant about seeing this bill on his desk here at the White House by Independence Day.
And then on Israel, is there a date set for the Prime Minister to visit the White House yet? Is he coming in a couple weeks?
There isn't a date, but the Prime Minister has expressed interest in coming to the White House to meet with the president and come to Washington. The president is obviously very open to that, but we don't have a date. When we do, we'll let you all know. Kate.
The president suggested he was open to sending more Patriot air defense missiles to Ukraine. Is that going to happen, and were there any other assurances that he made directly to Zelensky when they met?
I'll let the president speak on that. That was a private conversation between he and President Zelensky, but the meeting was a good meeting, and it was a meeting towards progress, and the president, as he said, repeatedly wants to see this war come to an end, but I'll let him speak on that specific point.
And Witkoff yesterday suggested that there would be more countries signing on to the Abraham Accords. What's the timeline on that, and which countries specifically is the administration looking to have sign on?
Well, the president is certainly hopeful that more countries in the region will sign on to the Abraham Accords. Again, we want to see a long, withstanding, endurable peace in the Middle East, and that's the way to do it. And when the president met with the new president of Syria, that was one of the requests that he made for Syria to sign on to the Abraham Accords. I don't have a timeline for you, but this administration wants to see that happen, and our partners in the region should know that. Rachel.
Thanks so much. Just to follow back up on the meeting that the president mentioned about wanting to have this meeting with the Iranians next week, clearly there's a willingness here from the administration to want to meet with Iranian officials. What is the holdup here in trying to schedule it? Are you experiencing any resistance from the Iranians?
No, have some patience. We just had this strike on Saturday night. The president secured a ceasefire. A lot has happened in the last week. He was just in the Netherlands. Now he's back home to have a big event this afternoon on the One Big Beautiful Bill and get our domestic priorities across the finish line. So we'll get there, and like I said, we're in constant communication.
And just one more, just on the goal of the meeting. The president mentioned yesterday that it may not be necessary to have an agreement with the Iranians. What is the purpose, what would be the goal of this meeting?
Again, to continue moving forward towards a long-standing peace in the Middle East. Jordan.
Yes, Caroline, thank you. So The president had some harsh words for both Israel and Iran on Tuesday as he was departing from the NATO summit after they both violated the ceasefire, he said. What's your response to Americans who are worried the peace isn't going to last and think that Israel is trying to plunge us into another endless war on their behalf?
I think the fact that the president was able to successfully negotiate a ceasefire when nobody thought that was possible, it was a surprise to everyone in this room, it was a surprise to the world, but the president got it done because he wants to see peace in this world. He does not want the United States to be dragged into these conflicts. Again, he's not afraid to use strength if he has to, but the president has already proven he can put America first and deliver on peace at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive goals.
And then one more. You know, after Carrie Lake, she testified in the House Foreign Affairs Committee on the waste, fraud, and abuse and the rot, really, in Voice of America and USAGF. The president called for Congress to kill it. What does that look like, and is the president willing to sign an executive order?
Well, I believe that that action would have to be legislative through Congress, and the president directed Congress to get that done in his Truth Social post yesterday. If there is any executive action that can be taken to cut some of the waste, fraud, and abuse or do away with the program entirely, I'm sure our great Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, is already looking into it, and if it can be done, it will be done here at the White House, but Congress should act as well. To the back. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, Caroline, thank you. The administration
To the back, and then Carrie, I'll come to you.
The administration said that the CIA report was low confidence intel. Can you share what other assessments are currently underway to get to the bottom of just how effective these strikes were?
Yes. Well, I can assure you what the CIA director said, that when we look at the entirety of the intelligence that we have to this date, it concludes that these strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities were absolutely successful. It was a total obliteration, as the president said, and not only does our own intelligence say that, but also the Iranian foreign minister has said that. We saw Israel conclude the same thing based on their own intelligence. We also had the United Nations say that as well. So I think the only other time the United Nations, Israel, Iran, and the United States has agreed on something is that the sky is blue, but they all agree that Iran's nuclear facilities were completely demolished. And I would just like to reemphasize, you mentioned this was a low confidence preliminary intelligence assessment, and the entirety of that assessment was not leaked to the media. Only tidbits of that assessment were leaked to CNN, and we have seen this playbook run before, where you have people in the intelligence community, or perhaps on Capitol Hill, we don't know, but I believe the FBI is investigating to find out who that leaker was, because it's illegal, and they should be held accountable for that, leaked bits and pieces of an intel assessment to push a false narrative. And it's to the same reporter, I will add, Natasha Bertrand of CNN, who has done this in the past. In 2020, it was Natasha Bertrand who had 51 intelligence analysts falsely lie to her, but she still put it on paper for some reason, that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. We all know that's not true, right? We can all agree on that now. That was a lie from the intelligence community. Also in 2020, this same reporter, Natasha Bertrand, wrote that a top intel agency ruled out the man-made lab leak theory of the coronavirus origins. Again, the president was right about that. This reporter wrote a lie from the intelligence community to seek a narrative she wanted to prove, and guess what? We now know that's the truth. Also, in 2024, Bertrand pushed the suckers and losers hoax. She also pushed the fine people hoax, which was taking the president's words purposely out of context. And then last October, and I believe this is notable, Natasha Bertrand published an article in Politico from the intelligence agency. She said that John Ratcliffe was speaking without any evidence when he said Iran was attempting to undermine President Trump's presidential campaign. And then we, of course, found out that was absolutely true. In fact, the Biden administration declassed an intel report which said they had high confidence that Iran had done exactly what Ratcliffe alleged. They did run an influence campaign to hurt President Trump's candidacy. In fact, we know the Iranians tried to take President Trump's life. And so this is a reporter who has been unfortunately used by people who dislike Donald Trump in this government to push fake and false narratives. She should be ashamed of herself. And that's not what reporting is. Journalism is trying to find the facts and the truth. And this week we saw this same reporter being used to push a fake narrative to try to undermine the President of the United States, and more importantly, the brave fighter pilots who conducted one of the most successful operations in United States history. And I think the American people fully know that this operation was a complete and total success. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Caroline. The Miami Herald recently published a story saying the Trump administration was targeting migrant foster children. The Trump administration has denounced this as false. Could you clarify the Trump administration's position on protecting migrant children, particularly the 300,000 lost under the Biden administration?
Yes, I saw that Miami Herald article yesterday, and I was aghast at the headline. It's egregious to accuse this administration of trying to target foster children. That is not at all what is happening at the Department of Homeland Security. And I learned that the Department of Homeland Security actually tried to work in good faith with this reporter to get this story right, to explain that this administration is trying to protect foster children. We are trying to keep children out of harm's way, even if that means their parents are not law-abiding citizens. We want to protect children, unlike the previous administration, which allowed children to be trafficked and raped, and in some cases killed because of the open border policies. Unfortunately, the Miami Herald just completely degraded themselves with this report, despite having a full list of facts from the Department of Homeland Security. It's another example of fake news. And the May border numbers speak for themselves. Not a single illegal alien was allowed into this country because of this administration's border policies in the month of May. That means not a single child was allowed into this country, possibly with human smugglers or human traffickers. And we know that was happening at the rate of thousands and thousands of children every single month in the previous administration for 4 years. And you didn't see any reporting of that from the Miami Herald, but now they're trying to accuse this administration. And we tried to give them the facts, and they refused to report them. So thank you for bringing that report to light. Aisha.
Good to see you again.
You too.
I know you're looking for.
You're usually on the Hill.
I know. I'm here today. I know you're looking for this leaker. Is it your belief? I know you said earlier you're not sure if it's on Capitol Hill or at the Pentagon, but is it your belief that it might be in Capitol Hill? And how confident are you that you'll find this leaker?
Well, I'm not personally looking for the leaker. The FBI is looking for the leaker, so you'll have to ask them in the Department of Justice in terms of this investigation. But leaking top secret classified intelligence is a crime, and people need to be held accountable for that crime.
And then can I just ask you about how you're going to be limiting intel to Congress? What would you say to lawmakers who say they have oversight privileges, they need this information?
This administration wants to ensure that classified intelligence is not ending up in irresponsible hands, and that people who have the privilege of viewing this top secret classified information are being responsible with it. And unfortunately, clearly, someone who had their hands on this, and it was a very few people, few number of people in our government who saw this report, that person was irresponsible with it, and we need to get to the bottom of it, and we need to strengthen that process to protect our national security and protect the American public. Mary Margaret, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
You just laid out a lot of different stories about disinformation that Natasha Bertrand had pushed during her time at Politico and at CNN. Why would any member of the Trump administration leak anything to her?
Well, again, as I just said, we're investigating who that leaker was. It could have been someone in the intelligence community, or it could have been someone on Capitol Hill who had access to this document. The FBI is searching for that person.